My name's Jackson Seal. I'm doing my leadership project for K-TIP this year. I just wanted to talk about and introduce or even reflect on some approaches to co-teaching. I know some of you have seen various co-teaching practices, methods, models, because some of you have co-teachers. But I just wanted to introduce some to you anyway. Maybe there'll be someone here you haven't seen, or even some you can become more familiar with. So I made a PowerPoint presentation and we'll discuss some of these models with you, and later on send out a survey to reflect on feedback and see what some of your thoughts are on co-teaching. Our first model here is the one teach, one support. This is one that I've often seen that's probably the most popular because, and depending on the teacher combination, teacher team, some teachers work better together, some teachers don't work so well together. The one teach, one support model, you have typically your classroom teacher in that core content that leads discussion, leads typically the instruction, while the other one supports that teacher, maybe walking around the room, monitoring behavior, helping students one-on-one, often removing some students for smaller testing groups. Some advantages to this model are it's better on keeping students on task while you have the one teacher presenting. The other teacher is able to walk around the room, redirect certain students, or even remove some students if necessary. It often saves time in distributing materials. If you're passing out handouts or worksheets, you have two people to do it instead of one, so it allows you more instructional time instead of just task management. Oftentimes behaviors that are seen or can be seen by the support teacher, maybe in the back of the room, that typically aren't seen by the teacher leading the instruction. So you can kind of manage smaller behavioral issues that way. Some disadvantages, and the biggest disadvantage I see with this model is a lot of the students see the teacher that usually leads instruction as the main teacher and don't really think of the other teacher as equal to that teacher. And a lot of students play the good mom, bad dad, or good cop, bad cop card, or they'll ask one teacher to use the restroom or grab a drink of water, and if they say no, they'll go to the other teacher. So in this model, it's very important that both teachers are on the same page and kind of know what's going on. This next model is known as parallel teaching. This takes a little bit more planning effort on both teachers. Both teachers plan jointly, but split the classroom in half to teach the same information at the same time. Often with special education, you can take the students with IEPs to a various area of the room. And the other teacher can lead the instruction while you can implement modifications and differentiate some of the strategies. Typically, you don't see this much in high school settings, or at least I haven't. But some advantages to this are the pre-planning. If teachers are able to plan together on tasks and assignments, then you kind of have two minds working at once, so you can provide better instructional practices. It allows teachers to work with smaller groups, and splitting the class may reduce problem behaviors, especially a lot of times when you have students who become anxious in a larger group setting, or even the student that wants the attention of being class clown or things like that. You can minimize some of those actions. Some disadvantages are both teachers do need to be competent in that content because they are planning instructional activities together. And the planning is probably one of the disadvantages, because oftentimes we have two teachers that work together, have a co-teach class, but don't have the same planning period. So it would be necessary for you to get together after or before school to provide those activities when you're team planning. And you can read some of the other disadvantages. This next model is known as alternative teaching. One teacher manages most of the class while the other works with a small group inside or outside the classroom. So if say your content teacher was leading the main discussion and your co-teacher was to take a smaller group of students to teach the same material, then you could remove some students who do work better in a smaller group. Not necessarily the typical students for a resource setting, but just students who might need that more one-on-one instruction. Some advantages: it helps meet the personal needs of the student. Both teachers can remain in the classroom so that one teacher can informally observe the other modeling good teaching. If need be, you can remove some students, even if it's just in the hallway, and provide modifications and differentiation that way. Some disadvantages are noise levels. For example, if you do stay in the classroom and you take your group to a corner and you still have the larger group, some of the kids in the back group might be distracted by some of the kids in the larger group, or vice versa. Groups vary with purpose and composition, or the students in the group will become labeled. And as we know, students pick up on things that they see in class. So if you're constantly taking a certain group with you, then other students might begin to ask questions of, why are they always going with you? Why can't I come with you? Why do they get extended time? Things like that. So some kids might label a smart group, or even discriminate against, why aren't they being provided the same things as the group the co-teacher is taking. And again, with the adequate space, a lot of classrooms with the number of students we do have, it is hard to break up, because when you have a co-taught class of 43 some odd students, then there is very limited space. Station teaching. This is something that students usually do well with, because they are able to move around and they're not just sitting down for 90 minutes. This is where both teachers divide the instructional content. Each one may take a responsibility for planning and teaching a certain part of it. So if I have a co-teacher and we plan together, say we're doing figurative and literal language, I may take a certain group and teach the figurative speech aspect of it, while the other teacher may take the literal aspect of it. So we can switch it up into two groups and rotate that way. That way you are dealing with smaller groups, students get to move around. You can even break it up to where the two teachers teach a group, and even the students have some guided discovery on their own in various groups with reading material. So some advantages are each teacher does have a clear teaching responsibility. Students do have the benefit of working in small groups, and I won't cover them all because I know you all can read. Again, with this one, a big disadvantage is that it does require a lot of planning. So usually before or after school, the teachers might need to meet up unless they have the convenience of having the same block for planning. Team teaching. Both teachers are responsible for planning, and they share the instruction of all students. Both teachers teach the lesson and actively engage in conversation, not lecture, to encourage discussion by students. So the two teachers will kind of be like in a conversation, and while one's providing some lecture, the other teacher may provide another aspect of that content. And it involves a lot of student participation with the team teaching, because with the team, it's not just the team of the teachers, but the team of the entire class as a whole. Because with team teaching, you get to, it's like a big open discussion. So both teachers do have an active role in this, a little bit more than the one teach, one support model, because it's kind of split 50-50 among the teachers, along with the inclusion of students. And this is important because both the students view both teachers as equals. They don't see one teacher as the leader and the other one is just like a backup role, or not as important as the lead teacher. And both teachers are actively involved in the classroom and the management of that classroom. Some disadvantages are, again, the pre-planning. Most of the disadvantages for some of these models are the planning. As we all know, there's not enough time in a day often for planning, especially when it involves two teachers. So the pre-planning is, or can be, a disadvantage depending on the situation. Teachers' roles need to be clearly defined for shared responsibility. These are just the references I took some of these models and approaches from. I attended some PDs over the summer that provided some of these models and provided a chance for real-world discussion, because a lot of these models look great on paper and look like they can work on paper, but the key factor in it is how certain teachers mesh together and can work as a team. So I'm going to provide some questions on a survey and send it out to you, and I would really appreciate if you could provide me with some feedback, because next year in the special education models, we are moving to less resource classes and more co-taught classes. So it's important that a lot of our teachers in general education are aware of some of these models, along with the special education teachers. So I'd greatly appreciate it if you could fill out the survey once I send it out, and I appreciate your support and your time.